I am a Unity game developer. But as you may or may not know, Unity as a company has been making interesting choices recently. In case you're interested in finding out, you can check out my shorts video. Because of this, there are a number of game developers switching from Unity to another game engine. In particular, developers have been trying out the Godot game engine as an alternative to Unity. Fun fact, if you go on Unity subreddit and click on Nothing to See Here, you'll actually be redirected to Godot subreddit. Anyways, I'll be trying out the Godot game engine for the first time in this video as well. Disclaimer, this video is intended for entertainment purposes only. Some information about Godot may be incorrect as I have limited knowledge of the engine. This video is about my impressions on Godot engine as a Unity game developer, so if you're expecting to see a direct comparison between Unity game engine and Godot game engine, then you should probably see other videos on YouTube. Godot, a game engine that I thought it was pronounced as Godot. It's a completely free and open source game engine that has a low learning curve, so anyone can pick up and start making 2D or 3D games. Because Godot game engine is completely open source, anyone can contribute their code to the core game engine. This means that if anyone encounters a bug or a missing feature that they think is absolutely necessary for the game engine, they can submit a pull request. Anyhow, what better way is there to try out this great game engine than making a game? Therefore, I decided to remake the Chrome Dinosaur game using Godot. If you've ever lost your internet connection and you happen to be using Google Chrome browser, you've seen this game before. The game is super simple. You try to go as far as you can while dodging the obstacles ahead of you. Here's Godot engine. As soon as I opened Godot, I realized how similar it was to Unity. There's scene, there's file system, there's output, and there's inspector. Naturally, I thought the workflow must be very close to what I'm familiar with. This ended up being sort of true, I guess. The first thing I did was to create a 2D scene, because, I'm making a 2D game after all. This seemed similar to Unity, so I proceeded. This time I clicked on the plus icon and added a rigid body 2D, because I was trying to make a moving player. I got a configuration warning message saying that I should add collision shape 2D. I tried to add one on the same object as the rigid body 2D, but it seems like that's not how Godot engine works. Instead, I had to add a new object with collision shape 2D. At this point, I thought I had everything I needed to make a controllable player, so I decided to create a script. By the way, there are several options for scripting language in Godot. I decided to go with C# just because that's the language that I'm most comfortable with, and it's a language I used in Unity game engine. However, it seems like a lot of people suggest Godot script instead. Later, I also found out that there are more online resources in Godot script. Anyhow, I opened up my C# script, and here's when I got stuck. The built-in text editor wasn't very helpful to me. There was no auto-completion, so I had no idea what I could type. Later I found out I could change the default text editor to VS Code, but still I needed some guidelines. Enough with my explorations in the game engine, I decided to actually learn the game engine. I started this by going to Godot engine docs, and I was surprised. Their docs were not only highly detailed, but written in very simple terms as well. I didn't have any difficulties understanding how it worked. Besides, they also provided a step-by-step tutorial series in the docs, which I could follow without any problems thanks to screenshots with annotations. I didn't entirely follow the tutorial, but instead, I only followed the bits that I needed to create my game. After reading the docs for a while, it turns out that what I've done before wasn't entirely ideal, to say the least. In Godot game engine, the base class for all scene objects is something called node. Here's how it works. Nodes are Godot's building blocks. There are different nodes that you can choose from. For instance, there's a collision shape node to represent collision shape data, or a rigid body node for physics simulation. These nodes can be put together by assigning them as the child of another node. And this will create a tree of nodes, also known as a scene. And it doesn't end here. A scene can be saved to the disk and then instanced into other scenes. Here's a quick example. Say if I want to create a player, I would make a new node, and under this node, I'll have a bunch of other nodes. And so this will be considered as a tree of nodes, also known as a scene. What about an obstacle that the player needs to dodge? The same concept applies here. I would make a new node again and attach other nodes. Now that we have a player scene and an obstacle scene, we need to put them together. How do we do this? Well, we can make another node, this time called the main level, and then have player and obstacle scene instances attached to this node. This whole concept might sound overwhelming, but if you think about it, this is actually a very simple, yet very flexible system. Another thing I've noticed is that I originally chose rigid body to handle player movement. This doesn't seem like the case with Godot Engine. There's a separate node called kinematic body 2D. This is what you would use if you would like to move an object and manage collisions with the physics engine. Now that I actually sort of know how to use Godot Engine, I started making the actual dinosaur game. I began by making some sprites and quickly got the movement working. During the making, I encountered one small problem. The dinosaur game had to have infinite terrain generation. The game can be played indefinitely with difficulty increasing over time. As someone who isn't entirely comfortable with the engine yet, I was hesitant to make an infinite terrain generation system. So this is what I did instead. The key here is to not move the player itself. Rather, move everything else that is in the camera's frame towards the player so that it seems like the player is moving forward. By doing this, we don't have to create a player movement system, camera follow system, and importantly, no infinitely large ground. This was especially ideal for my game, as my game doesn't even have a background that I had to scroll. Now for the obstacles. Typically in a game like this, you would spawn a random obstacle from a list with a random interval. While this isn't very difficult to implement, I took a much easier path. There is one obstacle in the scene at all times. This obstacle constantly moves towards the player. Whenever this obstacle reaches beyond the camera boundaries, it will reset its position to the original position. Doing this doesn't require me to spawn or despawn obstacles. With that being said, there are some limitations to this method, especially the fact that there can only be one obstacle visible on the screen. For a tiny project like this game, I personally think that this is sufficient though. I used a Position 2D node to save the spawn and despawn point of the obstacle. Position 2D is a node that allows me to save a position graphically. This is needed because the bare bone node does not hold any position information. In Unity, if you have a game object, you always have a transform component. At this point, this is how my game looked. Doesn't look very appealing, so I decided to change up some visuals. And here's how my game looks now. As you can see, the background is now in a different color, and the background is now in a different color, and the background is now... Honestly, that's the only thing I changed. Looks good enough to me. I added a score UI text to the game as well. The UI system was somewhat similar to Unity's UI system, so for what I had to do, basically adding one text, I was able to do it without any trouble. And that concludes my game and my adventure with Godot Game Engine as a Unity developer. Obviously, as someone who has only tried Godot for a couple of days, I cannot make a conclusive opinion on which engine is superior. Anyways, will I be switching my primary game engine from Unity to Godot? No. Mostly because I have a couple of work-in-progress games I'm working on Unity at the moment. Besides, as a small indie developer, choosing one game engine over another won't just turn me into a game developer who can develop AAA titles. This has been Semicoder. I kind of know how to code.